Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Driving Perilously, the show in which we turn on the radio and talk about what it is that we find. So today, on Legends 100.3, seems like it's Peggy Lee, but I'm not sure. I've just realized that Peggy Lee has a depth or a breadth, I'm not sure how to say it, but she does more than one style with her voice, and I think that's her. It's one of the standards of the Great American Songbook that they play a lot, but I don't know if I've heard this version before.
There's a fire
I think that's her. Whoever it is, it's back when people knew how to sing and back when people knew how to write songs, and it's a great song. I can just tell that immediately. So I have to be careful to not record too much of this copywritten material, but since I could tell the song was about to end, let's see which song this one is. I would say if the song has strings in it, I like it. So we've got Frank, Moonlight in the Pines. Is that the name of the song or just the next phrase? Anyway, beautiful song. One of the most famous singers of all time. Supposedly he's the first pop idol. I find it hard to believe, but before Elvis and the Beatles, the story is, if you read his biographies, the story of Frank is that he was the first pop idol. And that women, I guess, girls, I guess, would faint at his concerts. And I think his publicists were the first to stage girls fainting and have ambulances already waiting for them. Not sure about that part. But if you think about the pop idols and the people who cause hysteria from among their fans and the screaming and if they see him they will just die, that type of hysteria and type of fandom. Supposedly Frank's the template. Moonlight in Vermont. So that's Linda Ronstadt with Frank Sinatra, two great voices, two famous people who made it extremely well. There's a lot of respect going around for those two. Okay, so back to the pop culture phenomenon of boy singers and now boy bands, and I guess it's made its way into K-pop. I'm not sure if that's all connected, but if you watch the musical Bye Bye Birdie, which was written in '59 about events that took place in '57, not sure exactly about the dates. I think it was written in 1959. I think it's about events that happened in 1957. But if you think about those time periods, Grease is set in that time period, Hairspray is set in that time period. Something happened with pop culture and the invention of the teenager that set up these idols of singers. And they all, if they did well as idols of singers, then they moved into movies. And so you've got these pop singers who become movie stars, posters on the walls, mass hysteria, and they try to turn that into long careers, which Frank did better than anybody. So if he's the template, and he got an Oscar, and he had the longest career of any of them, more respected for his movies than Elvis is, and the Beatles didn't really go too far into movies, then boy, boy, they sure broke the mold after Frank. But anyway, if you watch Bye Bye Birdie and you see the story of Conrad Birdie, who appears and then disappears, and how the Freemasons are involved in his success obliquely, you get some of the background for conspiracy theories of how pop culture is used to influence society. So you've got the poor citizens of Sweet Apple, Ohio, who are taken off guard by the star who appears in their midst. And when Ed Sullivan comes to town, that's it. You know, the man is, you know, whoever's on Ed Sullivan is the top of the pops, is the king of whatever for the week. So you've got these forces that came along in the 50s. I suppose you had to pick a year, 57, 59, somewhere around there, for these pop culture phenomenons to just take the teenager and set them on a course for whatever. So when you see that the rock musicians' involvement with government agencies, I guess it's around the time of the Beatles in the United States, you really have the background for CIA, FBI, alphabet agencies controlling the minds of the youth who are going to grow up and vote, and hitting them right at that time when you shape their existence. So when you look at the people who grew up with Frank, and you look at the people that grew up with Elvis, and you look at the people who grew up with the Beatles, that's why we are where we are today. Didn't have to be Frank, didn't have to be Elvis, didn't have to be the Beatles. But if you look at those three templates of how to direct the youth, you've got a template of what happened, right? The people who grew up with Frank stayed near their homes, took over the family business, stayed in the job for 30 or 40 years. The people that grew up with Elvis moved away from wherever they grew up, or at least lived quite differently than their parents in some way. You know, that celebration of rebelliousness. But they stayed in the church. And the people who grew up with the Beatles did not. So that's what happened to our society. If you just look at Frank, Elvis, and the Beatles, and people who grew up with those three influences, and how they differ from one another, even though they're just a few years apart, you've got a society that doesn't know the difference between a hoo-hoo and a ha-ha. So you've got millions of people pretending that a vagina and an asshole are the same thing, knowing full well that they're not. And what brought us there? I don't know. Whatever came after the Beatles. So we got Frank, Elvis, and the Beatles, and then something happened, and now we've lost our mind. If a historian or an anthropologist or a sociologist is studying a couple who lived in a house, they have to now ask, well, was it before 1996 or was it after? Because we're either talking about a man or a woman, or we're talking about who knows. So whenever somebody wants to change the definition of something that has been the same for millennia, you have to ask yourself, who is directing this line of reasoning? Everybody knows what a couple is until very recently. Everyone knows what parents are until very recently. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. And I'll tell you something. Everybody still knows. But millions of people are pretending that they don't. So that's my thoughts for today. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever and whenever you're watching this. And this is a sunny, not too humid, post-hurricane version of Driving Perilously, the show in which we turn on the radio and talk about what it is that we find. Today we found a simple phrase, beautiful pop music, and turned it into a conspiracy theory for why we are where we are. So good luck with that, everybody.